I'm the asexual person that other asexual people know the most. I've kind of become the figurehead of the movement.
Time now for our Under the Radar segment, which comes to us tonight from San Francisco, California. David J. is a 23-year-old ladies' man who is also a virgin and planning on remaining one. He's not a priest. He doesn't want to become a priest. He just says he's not interested in sex, and apparently he is not alone. So you don't think about sex?
I don't desire sex. I mean, I see sex in the world around me all the time, so I think about it, I know that it's there.
So an asexual person is someone who doesn't experience sexual attraction. I've been in situations where I've been cuddling with people and that felt really great, and then they'll start kissing me and that's okay and a little bit interesting, but not anything I'm crazy about. And then kind of anything more sexual than that just stops making sense to my body. Around middle school was the first time I realized that everyone else was experiencing something around sexuality that I just did not understand. I'd been calling myself asexual for a long time. It had been a label that I used internally. It had been something that really was sort of a placeholder for this big kind of icky mystery that I just couldn't figure out about myself. And that was really, really scary and really alienating. I didn't know what that meant, and I started looking around kind of the world and trying to see if anyone was talking about the experience I was going through, and there just was nothing. It wasn't until I left high school that I was comfortable defining asexuality for myself. I came out to my parents the first summer of college, and the immediate reaction was to tell me not to limit myself. I think they had a really hard time seeing how I could be happy in the long term without having sexuality be a part of my life. And I kind of tried to explain to them that for me, understanding my asexuality and coming to terms with asexuality was opening up way more possibilities than forcing myself to be sexual would. I slowly got more and more comfortable putting that part of myself out there. And I could say, all right, this isn't a choice that I made. It doesn't indicate something traumatic about my history. This is just the way that I am, and I should think about being this way rather than trying to scrutinize how I can change.
I was a human sexuality researcher, and I was primarily doing work on the origins of sexual orientation. And I knew there were models that included asexuality as part of a sexual orientation, but it had never really been studied before. The study I did in 2004, I ended up analyzing a question on this survey asking about sexual orientation in this national probability sample from Britain. And the question was, who are you sexually attracted to? Are you sexually attracted to men? Are you sexually attracted to women? Are you sexually attracted to both? Or are you sexually attracted to neither? The neither answer had never really been assessed before or talked about before.
So Bogart specifically went back and looked at that question and found that among the 18,000, 1% of the respondents ticked off the neither category.
And therefore it shows that there's a number of people in society that really haven't been studied, haven't been cataloged, haven't been surveyed before.
It's really quite prevalent. You know, 1% is a lot of people on a large scale.
There we go. Hey everybody, it's Swank Ivy again with another issue of Letters to an Asexual. This is number 5, where I read letters that have been sent to me about the topic of asexuality. The topic of the day today is, why do I bother? People are always asking me, why do I make these videos? Why do I bother to talk about this all the time?
Hey guys, it's me, Swank Ivy again, and I'm back with the Asexual Top 10.
The Asexuality Top 10 was a collection of the most commonly suggested reasons for asexuality besides asexuality.
Whenever I say, hey, I don't want to have sex, they say, oh, well, you're not asexual, it's one of these other 10 things.
You're in denial about being a lesbian.
That I'm sick because I have a hormone problem, that I am too busy.
Because I couldn't get a man, or because I hate men.
I'm inexperienced and therefore don't have any interest. I'm afraid, I've been traumatized.
I'm hoping that that will change after they hear of it more often, either in the media or from meeting more than one of us.
Well, maybe it's repressed sexuality rather than, you know, that you're just like a normal guy walking around. Maybe it's repressed because you don't want to face what the sexuality might look like. Could that be? Lie down.
I wouldn't.
Just lie down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Affectionately escorted by his father, mother, and devoted chauffeur, this young neuter is taken to a special clinic hidden in a quaint section of the suburbs of a large city in Switzerland, safe from indiscreet glances. They are not interested in girls. And they are not interested in boys. They are only interested in being left alone.
I think it's a valid concern, the concern that, you know, asexuality is really not real. This is some kind of, you know, repression, or this is some kind of manifestation of something more deep-seated, something more psychological. So we thought we would do a research study asking people how they experience asexuality, how many psychiatric symptoms they have, any sexual problems that they have. We included quite a number of psychiatric, psychological, personality batteries, because I was convinced that we would find something like that. We would find some kind of indicator of you know, mental illness that could be accounting for the asexuality. And didn't find any of that. No indication of depression, of post-traumatic stress disorder, of anxiety, no elevated rates compared to the regular base rate. They would argue that it's not a choice. You know, I was just born this way. I didn't choose to not have sexual attractions. This is just the way I was formed.
I first started using non-sexual when I guess I was about 14 or 15, so it's been a while. There's no one who would turn me on that way as far as I can tell. I'm almost 32 years old, and I think it would have happened by now.
I'm an asexual, and that is a person who isn't interested in having sex.
For me, the most common response has always been, you just got out of a bad relationship and you're soured on men.
I've described myself that way, like when I got out of a really crazy relationship, I just decided I was going to be asexual in the sense of like ignoring that I have a vagina and like not wanting to go out with other people or whatever.
You know, you're just fed up with not being able to find someone to date or someone that you're attracted to.
Quote unquote asexual, the ones that cut their hair off, you know, because they need a fresh beginning. Whatnot. You know, I met that a lot. You know, on a date with me.
My last relationship, I think it ended in 1995. I was in high school, and of course it wasn't pleasant, that relationship ending, but that's certainly a really long time to be jaded about relationships.
When I had a boyfriend, every time that he made a move on me, I would have to respond somehow. And it was very forced on my part when I participated at all. Usually it involved an awful lot of begging and me finally breaking down and saying, okay, let's try this. And then when I didn't want to try it again, he would get upset and want to know what he did wrong. And I would keep saying the typical dubious female answer, it's not you, it's me. But it is. You gotta understand that I don't roll like that. It's true to some extent that maybe you don't know till you try it, but I feel like I would have known. There are an awful lot of virgins out there who know they want to have sex.
Why don't you just try it once, and then you'll know for certain whether you like it or not.
How many times do I have to try it before I can actually say that?
It's like goat cheese. You know, when you're little, you think, I would never eat goat cheese. It comes from a goat. I didn't even know they had milk. And then you try it, and it's sort of intriguing. And then after 3 or 4 goat cheese experiences, you know, you like goat cheese. I mean,
honestly, did you have to try sex to realize that it was something that you wanted to do? Do most 15-year-old boys have to try sex to realize
it wasn't a hard sell in my case, but I don't know, on the principle that everything is worth trying at least once.
I've had sex many, many times. I mean, if I were to give you a rough estimate, I'd say probably between 50 and 60 times, and with probably 25 or 30 different people. I think part of my motivation was that I was looking for breakthrough. I was looking for some opportunity to get past this barrier that I perceived within myself that made me not interested in sex. I thought that if I just kept looking for the right person, I could see objectively that they were very gracious and attractive as sexual people, but that still didn't motivate me to want to continue to have sex with them. I would have sex with them once or twice, and then I'd break it off. I didn't want to do it anymore. So, yeah, that's been typical of my sexual experiences. It's been a constant state of, I'd say, exploration, questioning, looking for an epiphany, and not finding it. I'm going to say probably late 80s, I just made the decision not to have sex anymore, and I haven't. I haven't had sex since, 87 or 88, and I haven't missed it at all. Now, I'm certainly capable of sexual arousal. I don't know if I made that clear. Capacity for physical sexual arousal is one thing, and the capacity to be aroused by other people is another.
Some asexual people experience sexual arousal and some asexual people don't.
I am one of the asexuals that doesn't have, I don't have a sex drive either. And some people who are asexual still say they have a sex drive, they have a libido, they just don't focus it on people. They just, I guess, take care of it themselves, as they say.
I set the bar pretty high for asexuality. I think if you're beaten off, you're probably not asexual.
We found in our study that rates of masturbation for asexuals compared to heterosexuals in that first study were no different. And that puzzled us. How can you be asexual and still masturbate?
But think about it. You can like having sex with a man and not like having sex with a woman. You can like having sex with yourself and not like having sex with a partner.
Yeah.
Okay. But wait, now you're describing something that's right.
You didn't answer the question. Do you like to have sex with yourself?
Oh, me personally?
Yeah.
I've tried it. I mean, it was all right.
It's not all that. It's not all that.
I've got the perfect quote. It's always in my mind. They say it's like cleaning out the plumbing. So they'll go through the motions. They'll reach a high level of arousal. They will ejaculate if they're a man, they'll reach orgasm if they're a woman, but it's not done so for the need for sexual gratification.
Beginning to talk about this at all, it seems to me, unpacks an enormous amount of diversity, because there's so much packed into the sexuality box. It's full, it's bursting over like grandma's trunk in the attic. There's a lot in there.
I think people think that sexuality is like this fixed point, like a fixed point on a compass. And I think sexuality is a molten thing.
Sexuality is your lifestyle of how you express yourself sexually, sensually, your mojo, your charisma.
It's emotions, it's physical, it's yearnings, it's desire.
Even before you get to talking about people who don't have sexual desire or don't have desires to partner and be sexual with another human being, before you even get there, you've already pulled a lot of stuff out of the box that isn't typically taught in sex ed.
Sexual desire is on a huge, very big continuum. And there isn't enough attention paid to that, to the variability in people's experiences of sexual interest and sexual arousal as well. There's the idea that there's a norm and that we should be kind of striving for that norm. And I think when you're looking at it as a continuum, asexuals would be on one end of that continuum.
People always mistake me for gay and Jewish, and I always say, you're giving me too much credit. If that was true, that'd be great. I happen to be an atheist who's asexual, but if be that as it may, I don't have a fear of intimacy. I have sort of a genuine lack of interest. I have genuine lack of interest, which is not good news for my boyfriend of 10 years, but, let's talk about it.
In, one's own personal experience, often you have met somebody who has really identified, maybe not used the term asexual, but has talked about having really no interest. And no desire really to be in sexual relationships.
I don't enjoy what we traditionally think of as intercourse. I desire to be close to women and often will engage in S&M, but when I'm doing S&M, it never ends in intercourse. It's never about penetrating the other person. I don't actually know the definition of asexuality, and I probably don't fit within it, but there are times when I think that I do.
Some of us are asexual at different parts of our own lives. I've been asexual at parts of my life. I think also most artists deal with a form of asexuality when they're making work.
There's people who, at certain points in their life, may end up having more of a kind of asexual expression. Probably the phenomenon here is a little bit different because what I ended up doing and what I ended up studying was people who had a lifelong lack of sexual attraction. So there's a bit of a difference between someone who has, for example, low sexual interest at a couple of years of their life or later on in their life than someone who has a lack of sexual attraction or lack of sexual interest for their entire lives or for the majority of their lives.
I don't think I really know anyone who's totally asexual, though.
I can't think of someone right now in my current life that I would go, oh, that person's asexual. It's one of those, it's one of those tricky things.
I do not know anyone who is claiming asexuality. However, I do know people that I would hypothesize may as well be.
Michael Jackson popped in my head. He just boop, popped right up in there.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is Morrissey, because I think he claimed to be asexual.
What really set Morrissey apart was he chose to be alone. The first openly celibate rock star.
It was all added to the mystery, I mean, how great is that? Somebody who's like, I refuse to fuck. You know what I mean? That's just like, my God. You're so cool.
The difference between asexuality and celibacy is a choice not to engage in sex. And so the person who is celibate may have strong sexual attractions, may have strong sexual desires, but choose not to engage in sex for perhaps religious reasons.
I think that was the problem with this C word, because the celibate word, because they don't consider for a moment that you'd rather not be, but you just are. I was never a sexual person, never.
We live in a society where everyone kind of assumes that you're sexual, and if you're not sexual, then you're broken. If you're not experiencing sexuality, then you can't really connect with people. You can't really understand yourself. You can't really understand pleasure. You're not really an adult, because sexuality is such a big part of becoming an adult in our culture. And so not experiencing sexuality can be really isolating, it can be really scary, and it leaves you with a bunch of stuff that you don't know how to think about.
Have a seat. Have a seat. Talk to me.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Explain this to me. What is this? You are the founder of this organization.
Yes, I'm the founder of the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, asexuality.org, which is where most of the discussion about asexuality is happening right now.
Okay, and on your website?
Yeah.
That you created. Before you created, there was no asexuality website. There were no members trying to find an organization to come together with.
There were people looking. There was no discussion. There were no resources. There was no community. There was no one I could talk to. And that was really scary and really isolating for me. And so I said, all right, if no one else is talking about this stuff, I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to just put something up there on the internet and see who gets in touch with me. And at that point, it was the summer of 2002. And that's when I first began to put together the website that turned into asexuality.org, where I kind of took these ideas I'd had about asexuality and began to put them out there. I started this online forum and had a couple of asexual people I knew who came in, but mostly there was nothing. Only way that anyone could find AVEN for like the first couple years that it existed was by independently inventing the word asexual to describe themselves and type it into Google. It was a big deal anytime anyone found the community, and it still is. They have this huge gushing post of their whole life story, and they talk about their experience, and they look to be accepted by everyone else, and everyone else will then come in and accept them.
There was really nothing for me to latch onto. There was no community with which I could identify. There was not even, I mean, the label wasn't even out there for me to put on myself. Eventually, I did find AVEN. That was really only within the last year. That's when it really started to come together that, hey, you know, this is who I am. These people are a lot like me.
You can search for this, and you can find other people like you. I personally have not accidentally met another asexual pretty much in my whole life.
If it weren't for the internet, would people have ever come together to talk about these issues? Chances are they never would. And unless some, you know, smug shrink somewhere said, oh, I'm going to name this and write it up, and then some other shrink went, wait, I have it. And you know, the shrinks have been naming and defining us for a very long time, 150 years-ish. Before that, Bible people. So, you know, we get to define ourselves.
Now AVEN has become so big, some people in the community call it the asexual Facebook.
It is the largest online forum for asexual discussion. We have forums in 15 languages and members from over 150 countries. The idea of asexuals and cake came about because somebody posed the question, what's better than sex? And everybody seems to universally agree that cake is just fantastic. Jokingly, cake would be the asexual sex.
And cake became this sort of symbol of welcoming and of acceptance and of ushering people into the community. That experience of finding other asexual people and of finding a way to talk about this stuff has really been something that has united the community and brought us together, and it's something that all of us can relate to. How are the Coles doing?
They're doing fine.
Okay.
No, they're learning fine.
Awesome. I've got a bunch of food to bring down in a second. We're here to celebrate San Francisco Pride. It's a huge festival and parade for the gay, lesbian, bi, trans community, the GLBT community. And we want to make sure that asexuality is represented there. So a bunch of us are going to all get together and march in the parade.
Welcome to the Alphabet Soup movement. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, two-spirited, questioning, leather fetish, asexual. You've arrived.
Before meeting David, I had heard the term asexual, but not in the context of an orientation or some way that people would self-identify or that had any movement associations.
Well, it's funny to think about. You know, you got the gays marching for the right to be cocksucking homosexuals, and then you have the asexuals marching for the right to not do anything, which is hilarious. Like, you didn't need to march for that right. You just need to stay home, not do anything.
Yeah, green, I like that too. And my sexual preference is not you. Oh, cool. So it applies to everybody, so I thought it was a really good keychain to have.
Say where you're from and say, like, something you're excited about happening at Pride.
I'm Kale, known as Kale Caesar on the forums, and I am from exotic Kansas. And yeah. And I'm just excited in general. Okay, next.
I marched in Vancouver's Pride Parade last year, and I felt very out of place and very like we didn't have a place quite yet. So having a place this year has been something I was nervous for at first, and now I'm just totally excited and jazzed about it.
I think this is totally historic, and I think we're going to be able to, it's going to be a really powerful outreach opportunity. Like everything we've ever done before has been on the internet and on the media, and we're going to be able to be face-to-face with 10, 20,000 people, which is pretty amazing, and I think all of them are going to walk away with
500,000.
Thank you.
500,000, just.
Yeah.
I'm Sparky, that's not my real name, but everybody calls me that. I'm probably a little too nervous and scared to be excited about the parade. I'm really nervous about being in the parade. So that's why I wanted to come tonight. I thought that'd make me feel better.
Get pumped up?
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of veggies and 3 flavors of marinated tofu. Here.
I have a few friends who doubt the existence of asexuality, and we've had like the same conversations over and over, where I explain to them that asexuality is there, I'm asexual, and my friends will be like, "No, you're just gay," and I'm like, "No, but just think what you like. Let's go get drunk."
Sometimes I'm a little thrown off by the fact that so many people are young. I'm 48, and I'm looking for other 48-year-olds who are asexual or in their late 40s, and it's a little disconcerting sometimes that there aren't that many. But I'm just getting used to hanging out with young folks and enjoying them. I came out as a lesbian in 1991. It didn't work out with my ex-girlfriend because I wasn't interested in sex, and I sort of knew from graduate school in when was I in graduate school? 1983, 84, that I wasn't interested in sex, but I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me and I needed to fix it. And so I spent years of my life doing that, trying to fix things that were, and then I found Avon maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and said that's me. I came out to one person, and I'm slowly coming out to them, but it's sort of difficult. I don't know why. It's more difficult to come out as asexual than as lesbian.
Yay, I like bow tie. I'm so worried that people both in and out of the LB, I can never get those, the queer community, might not think we really belong there. Because the Pride Parade is about being proud of your sexuality, and we're almost like we don't have one. I always felt like I don't have a sexuality.
As somebody who's pro sort of sexuality, it feels weird to be challenged to embrace a lack of any sexual urge or impulse or desire as a kind of sexuality all by itself. And it looks like such a dodge from outside. I know from experience, and I know from giving people advice about their sex lives for 18 years, there's a lot of people who are deeply conflicted about their desires, and a lot of people are really conflicted about their sexual orientations. And for a lot of these people, it'd be easier just to not have a sexual orientation. It'd be a great escape to say, oh, I'm not gay, I'm not lesbian, I'm not bi, or my heterosexuality is so disturbing to me because my kinks are this and this and this, that I'm just asexual, I'm nothing.
It's the assumption that we are all basically sexual, and asexuals are challenging that, and I think that sexuals are having a hard time understanding that that is even available to be challenged. But it is.
Gosh, do I want to be part of the queer movement? Well, I don't know if I'm really welcome there, because I hung out with the queer activist group on UT campus. They were totally comfortable with me when I was identifying as straight. I'm an ally. But when I started identifying as asexual, they were like, really? You mean you don't do it at all with anybody? Well, how do you live?
It's sometimes hard for asexual people to talk about and be in the mix around sexuality, but it's equally hard, I think, for some sexual people to consider asexuality as something in a sexual orientation space. So I really think it cuts both ways, the misunderstanding or the, I've got a boundary. Oh, no, not that.
I've never felt like I was part of the queer community, but that was before I was on AVEN and everything. And now I'm, if they say that we are, then I guess we are, but I never thought of it that way.
We're 122. So set up camp somewhere and own the space. Yeah. Seriously. So we're trying to find our place in line, but we're not really sure where that is.
Where's David?
He's coming.
Oh, wait. Hey, everybody. All right. Haven Pride? All right. 1, 2, 3. Haven Anyone want information about asexuality? Information about asexuality?
Asexuality.org. It means, non-sexual. That's what they're all about here.
You're the only one who took my sexual literature. I brought it like the plague. That's scary. What a touching little bit.
Anybody want a flyer about asexuality? Anybody? Anyone? There you go.
The reporter's my budding, I suppose. Awesome. Good for asexuals. Go asexuals!
Information about asexuality?
Thank you.
I wouldn't even try to recruit.
I'm a gay recruiter.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that you're very successful in that endeavor.
What is asexuality? What is it? People who do not experience sexual attraction to either sex. Woo! Asexual people rule! Awesome! Happy Pride!
I saw my brother. My brother saw me today. Yes.
Want to have coffee sometime?
Sure. Maybe.
But we're not gonna have sex though.
Well, we can talk about having coffee, but I have to catch up with my contingent.
No, come back. How much your number?
Take it.
Oh, he's a Christian.
No, I'm not a Christian.
We love you, but not that way! We love you!
You know, you can always be inclusive.
We are! We're like monkeys, you guys! Yeah! No! You're polluting my mind. You know what? I totally respect you, though. Just give us 20 feet. What's the deal? They don't want to respect? No! I don't know. There's got to be a .com somewhere to look it up.
Are there real asexuals?
They're totally real asexuals. If you
Really interesting.
Yeah.
I tried it for a year and I started to go crazy.
Oh, well, no, it's different than celibacy.
You know, as asexual people,
We don't have a desire to make sex part of our relationship.
But you do eventually, at some point, right?
No.
Never ever?
No. Because we don't want to.
Is it that you are not sexually attracted to anybody?
Exactly.
But you do get horny? Like
Not
you
really.
crave an orgasm?
No.
Okay.
So
Is
like,
this a religious thing?
no,
Okay.
it's like a sexual orientation. So it's not a choice. It's not like a proclivity. It's just that I'm not sexually attracted to people.
Do you ever have the desire to have an orgasm?
I mean,
And if you do, what do you think about, like, where do your thoughts go then? I mean,
physically, like physiologically, we work the same as everyone else.
Sure.
But we don't have a desire to incorporate that with our relationships.
So are most asexual individuals virgins, or not necessarily?
A lot of people, before they realize that they're asexual, have sex.
And is it difficult for them to climax?
Got my last one. Do you want information on asexuality?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me know if you have any questions.
I pity your poor soul.
Why?
That's because I don't stand for what you stand for.
I stand for everyone being sexual on their own terms. All right. There we go.
That was an interesting one.
Yeah.
This is a real nail. It's not a rubber nail or anything like that. And this trick is called the human blockhead, and people have been doing this, as far as I know, since the late 19th century. Well, I'm a sideshow historian. I work for the 999 Eyes, which is a locally based traveling circus sideshow that has real living human freaks. I paint banners in the old style. This is the one that I did in high school of conjoined twins who were separated and died. This is sort of a memorial. They both bled to death in the operation, during the operation. And I found it really, really sad that basically that anyone could be so unhappy with themselves that they would be willing to die to be different from the way they were born. To me, asexuality means that I am not interested in intercourse, in sexual intercourse. The boyfriend I had in high school, he pressured me a lot. And I felt really bad. I felt like, I'm not, quote unquote, putting out, so he must be getting it from somewhere else. Like, I promised him that I would have sex with him on prom night. And that rolled around, and he, leaned in, and I went in the bathroom and threw up because I was so terrified. I saw it as this hurdle that I would have to go through eventually. I thought I was going to have to go find a guy that I would never see again, get drunk, let him have sex with me, and then get up and leave. Wake up and leave. Because I thought that's the only way I'm going to do it, is if I'm anesthetized. It didn't ever occur to me during those relationships that it might be maybe I'm just not interested in sex. I have Asperger's, and I absolutely think that Asperger's and asexuality are linked. The number of people who have autism spectrum disorders on the asexuality message board is not anywhere near a proportional representation of the general population. I don't know enough about the biology of either one to speculate on why that is.
There may be some association between Asperger's and asexuality. One study been done looking at that.
What if you don't even know you're looking to hide from a problem? What if you are a child born with Asperger's syndrome and don't know that? You live your entire life now, you're 16 years old, and think that the place that I belong is with you guys.
We're saying we think it's okay, we're happy, and here's a place where you can come explore yourself. Here's a place where you can talk about yourself. We're not saying come to the asexual community and then just give up trying to figure out who you are. It's something that our community has really had to figure out how to come to terms with, and it changes how we provide support to people. I don't think that Asperger's is the one description for asexuality. I don't think there's any one thing that can be used as a root cause for asexuality, but there may be factors that are associated.
There were few studies that have been done on asexuality have raised more questions than answers. The people associated with AVEN actually know a lot more about asexuality than researchers do.
I think we have to decouple the phenomenology of asexuality from the causes of asexuality. It's not to say that it's not a real phenomenon if you can't find a biological explanation for it or a psychosocial explanation for it. The phenomenology, I think, has arguments for it as a reality independent of what causes it.
I don't really know if I would like to see it demedicalized completely, because I do think that there's something in my brain that I was born this way, and I would love to know what that is. We met online, and we've known each other for about 8 years. And we completely got along so well. It's like an old couple after meeting for a couple of days, just finishing each other's sentences and stuff.
It was like one of those things where like a lot of people don't really believe in like reincarnation or anything, but it seems like some people have been around more than once, and I got that from her, and I feel like I've known her. And, we were together like probably in a past life or something like that.
When I realized that I was asexual, I just told him that I wasn't interested in sex, and I think this is actually my orientation. And he's like, oh, that's cool, I'm not really interested in sex either.
I'm not officially asexual, I just don't really find much interest in it. I'm relieved that I don't have to perform, because as being a male, there's this stigma of, women have the stigma of having to put out. Men have an opposite but equal stigma of having to perform.
The distinction between romance and asexuality is probably an important one to think about.
How do you choose a date? Whose company would you enjoy? What about Anne? She knows how to have a good time and how to make the fellow with her relax, have fun too.
I would be curious about their desires, like how their interest levels about companionship, if it's not in a sexual or romantic way.
I don't know whether or not they would date or anything like that.
I don't know, I just get the sense that an asexual person has, sexuality and intimate relationships sort of shut off to them, so it's just sort of like a whole area that they don't need to focus on.
Asexual people probably, for the most part, do have a certain level of romantic attraction for others, even if they don't have necessarily a sexual attraction for individuals.
Within the asexual community, there are people who will identify as romantic and people who will identify as aromantic.
There are hetero-romantic asexuals who want an opposite-sex partner to not have sex with. And there are, of course, homo-romantic and biromantic. They can form a romantic relationship with the same sex or either sex. And you can actually be a pan-romantic asexual because, there are people who don't necessarily fit the gender binary. So anything that you can be as a sexual person, you can be as an asexual person romantically. I'm aromantic. I'm not attracted to either sex more or less.
How are we a couple as opposed to just friends who sleep in the same bed? Well, the easiest explanation is that we snuggle up together and hold hands and stuff in a way that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing with my friends.
Here's where I've gotten into the most trouble with the asexuals. I believe that if you're asexual, you shouldn't be dating somebody who wants to fuck something. I believe that you have to disclose. There's stuff on the asexuality.org website about asexuals who are in relationships with people who are sexual and how to finesse that. And you shouldn't ethically, morally gotten into a relationship with a sexual if you are asexual.
If I'm in a relationship with somebody who identifies as sexual, we go ahead and we set up boundaries. We see what we're both comfortable with. And what I try and strive for is that we're both making a compromise.
The fact that we're not having intercourse doesn't mean that we're not showing intimacy. I'm a very touchy-feely person. I'm always, sometimes sometimes I feel like I'm doing it too much, but...
I'm not really into kissing. I think it's kind of messy. I don't mind being touched, of course, but I don't really like kissing, and I mostly just, kind of close my eyes and let it happen. But I know he likes it, so.
I'm not averse to touch, but I don't get anything out of cuddling, and I find it kind of uncomfortable to be physically close with someone for a long period of time. It's really not my favorite thing to do, so I tend to avoid that. I don't crave physical closeness.
I can't imagine for myself an emotional relationship without a sexual relationship. For me, the two are entwined.
I've tried to have one, not on purpose, but it ended up like that.
We don't have sex for like a day. We're wondering what's wrong at this point. So I mean, yeah, we can't. It's just definitely hard to conceptualize.
You can only go to a certain point in a romance without having the physical act of lovemaking happen.
People who are asexual who want an intimate, perhaps quasi-romantic relationship that doesn't involve sex should date each other.
The reality is there are so few asexuals in the world that are out and that I'm romantically interested in that being with somebody who does identify as sexual is not necessarily a problem for me.
What I was supposed to be doing was finding a partner that I could form one really focused, intimate connection with. And that was really hard because all of my close relationships with sexual people and sexual people only dated when it involved sex, so when it involved sexuality. What I began to realize was that I wasn't functionally in my life, I wasn't having one person that was my kind of source of everything.
Are these pears? These are pears. I don't like eating like.
Are you approving, disapproving? What's going on?
Nothing is cooked as expected.
The salad is cooked, thank you very much.
Very good, very good. Progress. I'd never heard of asexuality before David J. showed up wearing a big t-shirt that said, I'm an asexual.
I guess you probably can think anybody's cute because he can get away with murder.
I can.
David can get away with
murder. Oh my God.
He could like.
Okay, no, I have to say
you encourage me to get away with murder.
I do. I love it.
You're the worst.
David and I met through a mutual friend, and her name is Poonam as well. He was just really friendly, approachable, and charming, and easy to talk to.
We hit it off right away. There was really great chemistry between us.
I could see myself like actually in a very long-term relationship with him forever and ever and ever because he's so wonderful, and like I feel so myself with him, and he's just completely open, and we're not official yet.
Oh, right.
Yet?
Yeah. I think David disagrees.
I'm waiting for him to ask.
Oh, David, okay, I want to see this.
You're so gendered.
He's not ready.
On your knees, on your knees.
He's not ready. Asexuals are anti.
Take it slow.
I
So what was the odd thing on it?
Other Poonam also wants me to marry her. So.
She's got a man. I don't have no man.
Well, you don't need one. It was, I think, a little confusing at first because she's a lesbian, I'm asexual. There wasn't a real clear direction for that chemistry to go. But we just sort of played it by ear. We felt it out.
He says that you're his other wife.
No.
Babe? Oh boy.
Sort of.
Basically, if your name is Poonam and you're over the age of 18.
There's two people that are a couple that I'm really close to together. This couple, Poonam and Steve.
David and I and Steve have just a really close friendship relationship. So when David comes over, we hang out quite a bit, and he usually ends up sleeping in the living room, and then I come in here and sleep with Steve in the night, and it's not uncomfortable at all. It's just like a friend is spending the night.
It's definitely a unique relationship that I have with David. I definitely have a certain level of comfort of talking to him about kind of just relationships in general that I don't have, especially with other male friends.
I keep trying to guilt him into not going to grad school out of the Bay Area so he can be here and, you know, when my kids are around.
When your kids?
When my kids are, you know, growing up and they can have him around. And
Uncle David.
I want to be there for your kids.
When we were hanging out before, we were just a little bit more open about, like, just hugging and maybe sometimes just different things, like cuddling or something, but now we wouldn't do that so much, and that's not really because of Steve so much as I think I've just made the decision for myself because I think it's confusing for me.
The fun thing about being asexual is that there's no clear distinction between, like, the traditionally romantic relationships and traditionally non-romantic relationships. So, like, dating, marriage, friendship, whatever. You can distinguish, but you don't have to. And so for me, I just kind of, like, joke around with those labels and don't take them seriously, which is why I've got so many weird labels flying all over the place.
I still don't get it. I've known you for years and I still don't get it.
But that's because you're you.
Yeah. Admittedly, that is because of you.
I guarantee you that I'm not the only one out there that does not understand that.
I'm confused too about that.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. I think I have a very standard, basic, simple understanding of relationships where you're either in a romantic relationship or you're a friend. That's probably a very basic difference between David and I. I represent millions and millions and billions of people.
Usually, for me, being attracted to someone has a lot more to do with, like, the relationship I could form with them and how that relationship could make our lives better. And I can still definitely be attracted to people, it's just that the result of that attraction isn't sex.
That kind of makes sense. But overall, I'm still definitely confused.
I am Heather Sudol. I am a freshman at Drew University. I am head of the education committee of the Alliance here, formerly known as the GLBTQ Alliance. I joined Avon in 2004. I've been listening to his podcast and his lecture, and he is a far better speaker than I am. I was hoping he would be able to educate people about asexuality because it's one of the identities that could be considered queer, that I know a lot of asexual people who also identify as queer additionally, because it is kind of queer to not want to have sex with people.
Come on in. It's going to be good. So, the kind of kitschy title for this talk is, Can Asexual People Fall in Love? I think there's a very prevalent idea that you need sex to be happy. And that was a really hard thing for me to figure out, that I could not be interested in sex and that could be okay. For a long time, I was really kind of scared and disoriented because I didn't know how I was supposed to form a romantic relationship with someone. There just weren't, there wasn't a way to do that without sex. There weren't asexual people around me. I didn't feel like I could expect a sexual person to be in a romantic relationship with me. And that was really scary because I wanted to have someone there for me. I wanted to feel like there were people in my life. I wanted to be able to really explore that kind of deep emotional connection with someone. Part of the problem here, part of the larger problem, is that I would say there's an insufficient dialogue in our society about non-sexual intimacy, about what it looks like to form close relationships that don't involve sex. If I want to form a close relationship with someone that's romantic, how can I do that and be happy? So monogamy works a little bit like this. Click. I'm in a relationship with my boyfriend, and this relationship is sexual. You know, everything's going good. Then all of a sudden, this girl Rachel comes along, and I'm kind of interested in Rachel sexually. And so I think about it, and I'm like emotionally conflicted, and I'm like, you know what? I really love my boyfriend, so I'm not going to be sexually interested in Rachel. And I'm back to just this. This only works if I'm only paying attention to relationships that involve sex. Otherwise, you get this. And actually, these are all real except for the boyfriend. That's fictional. For now. In a way, this is really more complicated, but it's also kind of cool. Because suddenly, it's pretty much impossible for me to be single. Right? I've got this whole big community of people who are supporting me. And I started saying, kind of almost challenging myself and saying, all right, how much can a community really do, right? How much of that stuff that I'm used to, that I want to have in my romantic relationship, how much of that could happen if I just really focus on building my community?
Initially, he used to talk a lot about, like, you know, what I perceived as kind of like as if he has this chart of like all these primary relationships and, you know, people he hangs out, you know, I spend this much time with this person and this much time with this person. Sometimes it would make me really worried that you know, like if I did something wrong, I would fall off the primary relationship chart.
I think about how much time I spend with people. I think about the role that they play in my life, and I think about what
tends to view relationships as with a very functional purpose. So sometimes that's off-putting in terms of it feels like you're being used for one aspect of your personality rather than the whole picture. But I think it is helpful to really think about how do you connect with someone in a way that's really going to last into the long term.
Are all of these people so close to you that you love them?
Well, I love all of these people. I mean, it depends on whether how I define being in love and whether I consider that like the important. I don't think I have to be in love with everyone in order for them to be on this chart, if that makes sense. If I started treating my friendships with the same kind of respect and honor as people treat a relationship with a romantic partner, then those relationships behave that way. People responded that way. There was more feeling there. There was more love there.
For me, David was probably the first one who was in both. As far as someone who was a friend to me, but that I shared a deeper level of intimacy that I would normally in a sexual relationship, but we weren't sexual.
I feel like he's in my inner circle and I'm in his, and that we know we'll always be there for each other.
We do talk about like having, maybe if we could have a co-housing thing or something where we could all live together, so we could have like, you know, children together.
Clearly I've got love in my life, and it's there in my friends, and it's there in my community. This many people can do a lot more than this many people. In lots of different ways, we're beginning to question a lot of these ideas about not just around people needing sex to be happy, but around people needing all kinds of things to be happy. We are inventing a bunch of new languages that are useful, hopefully not just to asexual people.
My daughter is involved with it. I said, well, I got to learn.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here, and it sounds like I don't understand it, but I listened.
Well, if you have more specific questions, I'd love to.
I don't even know what kind of questions to ask because, you know, as the saying goes, you know, I live one way and my daughter is sort of going in a different direction. I'm just trying to grasp this whole thing. It's kind of like it was somebody else always does. You know, you think it's never going to happen to you, but I was just curious, like, you know, like. No, you're only that much. You're only a couple of years older.
25, yeah.
You're only a couple of years older than these kids here, and like you are, you know, you're influencing them. I don't want you spouting something very bizarre.
No, because I'm the founder, I tend to sort of be a de facto spokesperson.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, and one of my really key points, which I was trying to emphasize here too, is that I'm not in any way trying to be prescriptive. I'm trying to say that there needs to be a dialogue that's open for people to understand themselves, and I think there's...
And the outside community to understand what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, and so that we can articulate what's going on with us to other people, but I think that we're still figuring it out. I gotta go. But thanks so much for having me here, and this was really fun.
Yes, it was.
All right.
I'm really excited.
Take care.
Bye.
I would hug you, but I would get impaled by your knife.
Oh, yeah. Wait, I want another hug. Please.
Okay.
Yay.
And good
Now
luck
I
with
have to write
everything.
in my life journal, David J. hugged me. Because.
Bye.
I mean, sexuality for us, it's a lifestyle at this point, I think. I mean, we're polyamorous. We do some swinging here and there. I can agree with that statement with asexuality and polyamory having something. I mean, they're kind of on the opposite ends of the fringes in some ways, and have a lot to gain from kind of joining forces in that way. Because, as he says, I mean, we're trying to do things in a non-traditional way and kind of define things within our own selves and what we feel is appropriate.
Yeah, it's. I think the thing they have in common is freedom. Just the idea of like the freedom to define one's own sexuality as one feels is appropriate for themselves.
We want the freedom to say yes as much as possible. He wants the freedom to say no as much as possible. So, I mean, it's the same thing. It's just the other side of the coin.
When I think about intimacy, I still think mostly about communities. But I've also been shifting a lot and thinking more and more about intimacy with one person. So that's a transition from where I was a couple of years ago. And I think that the biggest thing that created that was what happened in my relationships. Poonam both started a business and got a new girlfriend at the same time and got really, really busy and kind of went through a pretty major life transition.
He approached me and just said, look, I don't think that you can give me what I want. And it was a bit heartbreaking for me, but it was true. And, you know, I cried that night thinking about feeling a loss, a genuine loss in my life. I do feel that once I entered into a sexual relationship, that relationship did take primary precedence over my other relationships. I didn't think that would be the case with me. I didn't want that to be the case, but it just naturally happened that way. And
it's kind of the closest thing to a breakup that I've ever had. Aliza moved across the country for grad school, and so while we're still close, we're not as close as we used to be. Poonam and Steve and I, we really loved one another. We were really committed to one another. And we kind of had a plan for the 2 years I was going to be in grad school. We were going to keep our relationship going with the hope of maybe eventually being able to move together or raise kids together. And I think because of stuff that was going on in their life, they weren't able to really fulfill those commitments that had gotten talked about. And so the relationship kind of faded for that reason. Feeling those relationships drift apart was really scary for me. And it sort of made me feel like maybe as close as I could, you know, even if I could make community relationships that were as close as I could possibly make them, they still wouldn't be relationships that I could depend on in the way that I wanted to. They wouldn't be relationships that I could raise a kid in. And that was really disheartening for me for a while. And thinking about that, that made me more interested in a relationship with one person as a way to be kind of more stable. Even like that person could be a sexual person. I could even be in a relationship that involves sex. I know that that's something that a lot of asexual people do, and that's not something I'm opposed to. But I know that I would need kind of that community building or something else to really be the core source of intimacy in our relationship. So I want to clarify a little bit why sex is something that I want to have in a relationship with someone. The reason that sex is something that I'm now kind of willing to have in my relationships with people really gets to the fact that sex is how we take relationships seriously. And that I feel like I'm going to have a much easier time having a relationship that gets taken seriously and a relationship that works. I've got a lot more options if that's something that I'm willing to put on the table. I've spent so much time in this community fighting for the idea that people don't need sex to be happy, that it is really kind of disheartening for me to feel like I might need to have sex just because that's the only way to like access the kind of intimacy that I want to access. It feels like I'm not able to really form a connection on my own terms in the way that I would like to. And that's fine. No one forms intimacy totally on their own terms. But that makes it, yeah, that was, I think, a little hard for me to get over.
I want to put my video up on the internet for everyone to see. Upload video. As far as relationships go, I'm not interested in finding like a domestic partner or a romantic partner. I can forge very close relationships with other people. There's just never any sexual attraction, and there's just never any wish to declare ourselves mutual significant others for any reason. I want to be by myself and run my own house and support myself. Marriage as an institution is something our society really does build on, but it's not the only way, it's not the only option. Sometimes it is frustrating that people think that you can't build a household with one person. I like the analogy of soloists versus people who sing in duets. Lots of people prefer duets. Some people will say that they're inherently superior because they have harmony, but I think there's a place for soloists.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the wedding of Brian and Elizabeth. We are here today to witness their commitment to each other.
Do you promise to remain steadfast and true? Do you promise with all of your heart and soul to honor this vow until death do you part?
I do.
By the powers vested in me by the state of Texas, I pronounce you now husband and wife. Congratulations.
I've always had issues with having people in my personal space, and the thought of sharing a bed with somebody was really kind of terrifying for me. And then I found the right person, and I didn't even think about it, you know.
I don't even remember eating any of that.
There's proof that you ate. When I roll over and he's not there because he's gotten up to go to work or whatever, then, you know, it's like there's a piece missing. It's a good.
You actually go in and...
That's a good one. And to me, love is having another person who is just like an extension of you.
Love is not rational and can't really be defined.
I don't even know how you would feel. I've never felt it, so can't really say.
Acceptance of someone as they are.
A lot of times I'll meet a girl and I'll say, I want to be post-passion. You know, I want to go right to the point where we're in bed together reading The New Yorker.
However we relate, whatever we call the whole love thing, if it's for real, for real, for real, for real, then it's exactly what both people want. And the level of physical intimacy, the level of emotional intimacy, the level of honesty, playfulness, seeing each other, all of that is dependent upon them.
It's great to meet you. Yeah, come on in, come on in.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Antonia. I'm from Brooklyn. And the way I found out about asexuality was actually by accident. I had been describing myself as naturally celibate. You know, that was my term. I never heard of the word asexual before. I found out about Avon, and then I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like me, you know?
As far as finding out the term was about, let's see, maybe like 6 months ago.
So my name is David. I started thinking about myself as asexual 14 years ago, probably. And like you said, you made up a term. Like I was in middle school, I guess, and was kind of trying to make up something to describe what I was going through. And so I started using the word asexual to describe myself, and it took me a couple of years to come to